What up, rough leaders? Welcome back to my channel. As we go through Kitty, we're at Gordon Street and Lesingen Road. So this is Gordon Street in Kitty, and that's Lesingen Road. Across from Campa in Guyana, that military base. This is looking north along Lesingen Road to the seawall. And that's a seawall out there, right? In the north of Gordon Street, there is David Street, William Street, and Public Road. And against the seawall, that's Rupert Craig Highway. We just want to see what has changed in Kitty. As you can see, some of these buildings have been here since the origin, but as you can see on the other side, lots of development, lots of construction happening in Kitty. Kitty being one of the original residential neighborhoods in Georgetown, and therefore prime real estate for development. You know, it's kind of the part of the city where you'd want to be, both to live and to do business. So this is Gordon Street in Kitty. Now this is a new building. Somebody's constructing a high-rise. Well, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 floors, possibly a roof garden. It might be residential. A residential building here in Kitty. These are some of the original homes, original residences on Gordon Street in Kitty. It's a narrow street, so find yourself very close to the buildings. RV Enterprises, and another what appears to be residential building here on Gordon Street in Kitty. On the other side, just looking back where we came from, there's still some pre-colonial or colonial buildings that were built in the 1960s and the 70s, but this is new. This one I think was constructed within the last 5 years. It's a new residential building here in Gordon Street, Kitty, and looks like a condominium with multi-unit condominium. It's looking down towards Lesingen Road on Gordon Street. Some of the renovations going on here. This is a newly renovated building next to an older colonial building. And so basically a lot of the renovations in the 1980s, as I said before, converted some of these wooden buildings into concrete buildings, and later on into multi-story massive buildings. So in the 1980s, a lot of the wooden buildings became concrete structures. And then in the 1990s and the 2000s, they started becoming these massive buildings, tall buildings, so as to take advantage of the, you know, going up higher gave you more space, more volume. And this is what has happened in Gordon Street, Kitty, as in many other parts of the city. So you have buildings that were renovated in the 1980s, which you can tell from the concrete facades, right? They became concrete buildings in the 1980s. And then you have the buildings that are more recently renovated in the 1990s and 2000s. They were just taller and bigger. And then in the 2000s up to the 2020s, they are now multi-unit condominiums here in Gordon Street in Kitty. This one's for sale. This is a older residential building. Now the lot is for sale. This one is under renovations, being rebuilt. As we approach Alexander Street in Kitty, this building at the intersection of Alexander Street and Gordon Street is a home furnishing store. That is Gordon Street. It's Medline Pharmacy. this location, Gordon Street and Alexander Street. That's Greenfield Meat. That's a meat center here on Alexander Street. That's Alexander Street looking north, looking back at Gordon Street. Gordon Street and Alexander Street. That's what's happening here, guys. Gordon Street in Kitty. Greenfield Meat is new establishment here. There. Yeah, yeah. That's Gordon Street looking back towards Alexander Street. This is that school, F.E. Pollard, I believe. Is that one? Yes, on David Street. We saw the front side of this school last time we were coming down David Street in Kitty. But this is Gordon Street, east of Alexander Street, and this is what we have. A lot of the buildings have now been renovated from the 1960s. They're now concrete. Wooden buildings have now become concrete, right from the 1980s renovation, like I said, and the 1990s and 2000s saw bigger, taller buildings being built. So, for example, this is a 1990s renovation of a Gordon Street building. Here is a Church of Christ on Gordon Street, but this is one of the renovations from the 1990s with the roof deck and everything built into it. Now, this part of Gordon Street that's east of Alexander Street, like Alexander Street, like I said, is the main thoroughfare in Kitty. East of Alexander Street, you have much more of residential neighborhood and less of the commercial properties that you'd find on Alexander Street. But of course the density of residential, this is Assembly Hall, Kitty. It's another small church. I think that's the Brethren Church, if I'm not mistaken. This part of this Kitty, largely residential, but also, you know, in high demand now because of the changes in the city, changes in the demand and the growth, right? What you have now is a lot of commercial property, residences moving into these residential neighborhoods. This, for example, is Branders. We brand anything, so Branders. So this is a commercial property that's built recently in this residential neighborhood. It's called Branders Uniforms Unlimited in Gordon Street, Kitty. So commercial property moving into residential neighborhoods here in Gordon Street. Alright, so what was once an entirely residential neighborhood here in Kitty is now becoming not only commercial but being modified. That's the Baptist Church, the Bible Baptist Church. Here you can see from how tight the lots are and how small the churches are that the community, the closeness of the community was preserved, and that even though there's like a lack of space, they still managed to put churches in in between these buildings. Some of the homes have been converted into churches. This is another building being built here on Gordon Street. New building. That's an old lot where a building probably existed before being torn down, and a new building being constructed. This is the the eastern boundary of Kitty. Right at this point, this is Lamaha Street in Kitty. Lamaha Street, we've seen Lamaha Street before in previous videos. Right, in the previous video we've seen Lamaha Street. But looking back at Gordon Street from Lamaha Street in Kitty, we've seen this building before in previous video. That is a restaurant and lounge, a residential, apparently condominium complex with parking garages on the lower floors. Morning. As we cross over into the end of Gordon Street, as you can see, beyond Lamaha Street, we're now in another division of the city. This one is Campbellville. Right, so I'll show you the map of Gordon Street, the map of Kitty in another video, where you can see the boundaries of Kitty. Right, you can see that at Lamaha Street, if you're looking back at, it becomes Campbellville in this section of the city, and therefore Gordon Street. Morning. Another renovated house on Gordon Street, now in Campbellville, and this comes to an end, I think, at the train line. There's a section of Kitty that is bounded by the train line. Morning. Right, there's a section of the city is bounded by the train line. Morning. You can see that is renovation and rebuild, new buildings in this section of Gordon Street in Campbellville. And over in that direction, that's the Anglican church that we saw from David Street. And it's a dead end. So this is the end of Gordon Street in Kitty. Beyond that fence, those homes are facing the train line road. That's the St. James the Less Anglican Church, right? St. James the Less Anglican Church, which we saw yesterday or the day before, and their cemetery. That's Gordon Street in Kitty. Gordon Street, in this case, in Campbellville. Crossed into Campbellville after we crossed over Lamaha Street. So that's what's up, guys. That's Gordon Street in Kitty. This is what's happening in this neck of the woods. As you can see, a lot of change. The city is being transformed by residences being renovated, old buildings being torn down, some being rebuilt, bigger, taller, some being converted into commercial structures, and some of them being redesigned, modified into much more modern architecture, and some of it exactly like it was in the 1960s when it was built originally. If you lived in this neck of the woods back in the 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, tell me in the comments below what has changed. What do you notice that's different now than it was before? Do you recognize this neighborhood? Has it been transformed? And wait until you see what it looks like in 10 years after the oil boom takes over Guyana, because all of this is now prime real estate in Georgetown. Share with me your comments below. Share this video with friends and family around the world. Let people know what's happening here in Gordon Street in Kitty and Campbellville, and in the fastest growing country in the world, Georgetown, Guyana. Later!